Chapter 26. Collecting Honey for Sophia Ashbourne. Sophia Ashbourne, are you deliberately trying to make things difficult for me? Ethan Blackwood was furious. Sophia Ashbourne ignored him, focusing intently on the large beehive hanging from the giant tree. The tree was at least 30 meters tall, and the beehive was positioned exceptionally high, seemingly without any accessible branches or footholds nearby. This was a challenging task. Isabel Hawthorne, along with classmates, watched the scene with varying expressions. Lucas Everhart, in particular, had a look of schadenfreude. He had known Sophia Ashbourne for a long time and understood her nature. Since she had made this request, it meant she believed Ethan Blackwood could accomplish it. What a joke! That beehive was at least 20 meters high, almost at the very top of the tree. Even the most skilled tree climber would find it impossible without equipment. It was clearly an attempt to embarrass Ethan Blackwood. Lucas Everhart had a smirk on his face, eagerly anticipating the spectacle. He even moved to a better viewing spot, ready to enjoy Ethan Blackwood's humiliation. Sophia Ashbourne, tell me, where is the most dangerous place on this entire island? Ethan Blackwood asked, looking at Sophia Ashbourne. Sophia Ashbourne tilted her head slightly. The most dangerous place, perhaps the cave in the Death Valley, or the deep sea, what does it matter? It matters a great deal, just wait, when I return. I guarantee you'll be satisfied, Ethan Blackwood declared confidently. Upon hearing this, Sophia Ashbourne was momentarily stunned, though she quickly regained her composure. Her initial impression of Ethan Blackwood was that he was a bit of a scoundrel, but his recent performance had shown him to be capable. His words certainly hinted at something grand. Seeing Ethan Blackwood about to leave, Sophia Ashbourne called out, "Ethan Blackwood, be careful." "Don't worry," Ethan Blackwood replied without looking back. Sophia Ashbourne looked at his retreating figure, her expression unreadable. Crew members, Ryan Caldwell and Victor Harrington, were initially worried. They had just caught a wild boar nearby and were planning to barbecue it for their evening meal. If Ethan Blackwood ran into trouble, it would be extremely inconvenient. However, seeing his confidence, they relaxed a little. "Don't follow me, just wait for my good news," Ethan Blackwood shouted as he walked away. The crew members glanced at each other, then continued to prepare the wild boar. They trusted Ethan Blackwood. "Ethan Blackwood is going to the Death Valley," Isabel Hawthorne asked Sophia Ashbourne. Sophia Ashbourne nodded. "It seems he is. I told him the Death Valley is the most dangerous place on the island." After a slight pause, she continued, "And the place with the best honey." Isabel Hawthorne and classmates widened their eyes. The most dangerous place was also where the best honey was found. That was certainly intriguing. Meanwhile, Lucas Everhart was laughing heartily. He actually went, "Ha ha ha, he's just asking for trouble. Let's go, classmates. Let's follow him to the Death Valley to see if he'll be eaten by a wild beast." No one responded. Lucas Everhart's words were a bit too malicious, even for those who disliked Ethan Blackwood. It's true that the honey from the Death Valley is extremely valuable. It's said to have special medicinal properties, Madeline Spencer interjected, surprising everyone. Most classmates had no idea about this. "Madeline Spencer knows a lot," Emily Winters commented, looking at Madeline Spencer in surprise. Madeline Spencer smiled faintly. "It's nothing. I just read about it in a miscellaneous book." Lucas Everhart scoffed. "So what if he gets the honey? It's just a small amount. Not even enough to fill Captain Sullivan's stomach. What's the point?" "Lucas Everhart, don't be so sure. Ethan Blackwood often creates surprises," Sophia Ashbourne said calmly. Lucas Everhart was about to retort when he saw Sophia Ashbourne's stern expression and quickly shut his mouth. About an hour later, Ethan Blackwood returned. He was holding a large amount of honeycombs, at least 2 large buckets full, dripping with honey. "Oh my God, how did he manage that?" Lucas Everhart dropped the branch he was holding, his jaw agape. Everyone was utterly astonished. Ethan Blackwood had really brought back honey. And so much of it. Ryan Caldwell, Victor Harrington, and crew members rushed forward to help. Ethan Blackwood, where did you get so much honey? Ryan Caldwell asked, staring at the honeycombs in Ethan Blackwood's hands. He had never seen such golden, fragrant honey. Ethan Blackwood smiled. Madeline Spencer. That book you read about the Death Valley was very accurate. The honey from there is indeed exceptional. Madeline Spencer and Emily Winters exchanged a look, both surprised. Ethan Blackwood had really gone to the Death Valley and returned safely with honey. Ethan Blackwood, I'll go wash up first. Then we'll eat some honey and barbecue wild boar, Sophia Ashbourne said to Ethan Blackwood. Excellent, Ethan Blackwood replied, looking at Sophia Ashbourne. Then at the others. Ethan Blackwood, give me some honey, Lucas Everhart said, his eyes practically glued to the honey. He had a sweet tooth and found the honey irresistible. Ethan Blackwood looked at Lucas Everhart and sneered. What? Didn't you say I was just asking for trouble, and that I wouldn't bring back much honey even if I did? Why do you want some now? Lucas Everhart's face turned red. I was just joking, Ethan Blackwood. Just give me some honey. Oh, please, Ethan Blackwood, just a little bit, okay? Lucas Everhart pleaded. Ethan Blackwood ignored him, turning to Lucas Everhart's friend, Maxwell Goldstein. Maxwell Goldstein, you're usually quiet. But you're quite a good guy. Do you want some honey? Yes, thank you, Ethan Blackwood, Maxwell Goldstein replied. Surprised and delighted. He liked honey, but didn't dare to ask for it after Lucas Everhart's earlier outburst. He genuinely admired Ethan Blackwood now. Lucas Everhart could only watch as Ethan Blackwood gave honey to Maxwell Goldstein. Feeling a mix of frustration and regret, he knew he had messed up. Lucas Everhart, I'm going to eat this honey piece by piece. Just watch, Ethan Blackwood said with a grin, then took a large bite of a honeycomb. Savoring the taste. Everyone burst into laughter. Lucas Everhart stood there, embarrassed and exasperated. At this moment, another figure emerged. He was dressed in luxurious clothing, and his face, though somewhat pale, could not conceal the immense aura of wealth emanating from him. He was Maxwell Goldstein. With a swift movement, he appeared next to Madeline Spencer. Gently helping her up, his gaze swept over Ethan Blackwood with a hint of disdain before turning to Madeline Spencer. Madeline, are you all right? He asked with concern. Madeline Spencer shook her head. Her face still pale. She struggled to stand up. Just minutes ago, she had been a picture of youthful vitality, radiating confidence and beauty. Now she appeared frail and vulnerable. Her face devoid of its usual vibrancy. Even her delicate and charming demeanor was gone, replaced by a profound weariness. With a sympathetic sigh, Maxwell Goldstein looked at Ethan Blackwood and then back at Madeline Spencer. His voice, usually brimming with pride, was now tinged with a mix of helplessness and anger as he spoke. It's all Ethan Blackwood's fault. If he hadn't spoken those words, Captain Sullivan wouldn't have been enraged. And we wouldn't have been left here to face this dreadful storm and those terrifying waves. He directly caused all of this, and yet he still wants to run away, abandoning us to our fate. This kind of person should be thrown into the sea to feed the sharks. Hearing this, Emily Winters and Sophia Ashbourne instinctively turned their heads, their gazes fixed on Ethan Blackwood. Emily Winters, still reeling from the shock, remained silent. Sophia Ashbourne, however, clenched her teeth, her eyes showing a flicker of doubt. Isabel Hawthorne and Lucas Everhart also looked at Ethan Blackwood, their expressions complex. The classmates, observing the scene, began to whisper amongst themselves. Look at him trying to escape by himself. He really is evil. He brought this upon us and now he wants to abandon us. Scum, truly a piece of trash. He caused all this. And now he wants to run away. How despicable. The classmates were filled with righteous indignation, their voices rising in a chorus of condemnation. Ethan Blackwood's gaze swept over everyone present. his expression unreadable. Just as he was about to speak, Victor Harrington, who had been supporting an injured Ryan Caldwell, suddenly noticed something and loudly exclaimed, "Look, there's a boat approaching over there." Everyone immediately turned their heads in the direction Victor Harrington was pointing, and indeed, a ship was rapidly approaching from the misty distance. This ship was much smaller than the one they had been on, resembling a small fishing vessel. "We're saved, we're saved," Emily Winters burst out, her voice filled with relief. "Yes, we're saved," the classmates cheered, their voices echoing with joy, many of them in their excitement. Quickly began signaling to the approaching vessel, waving their arms wildly. The crew members on the ship also spotted the students stranded on the island. After a few more minutes, the ship finally reached them. A sturdy ladder was lowered, and the kind-hearted crew members began helping the students onto the boat. As the students boarded, they couldn't help but inquire about the situation on the other ship. "Excuse me, what happened to the giant cruise ship?" they asked. "Oh, you mean that ship," a crew member responded with a sigh, shaking his head. "It was quite tragic. The ship was caught in a massive storm and unfortunately sank. We were passing by and happened to see a few people drifting in the sea. So we rescued them." "What, the ship sank? Then, what about Captain Sullivan? What about the other crew members?" Upon hearing that the ship had sunk, the students were shocked, their faces turning pale. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with disbelief. "They're all gone. They sank with the ship," the crew member replied, his voice filled with sorrow. Suddenly, a student exclaimed, "Then what about Ethan Blackwood? We saw him jump into the sea earlier. Did he also sink with the ship?" "No, he's here. He was the first one we rescued," the crew member explained, pointing towards the cabin. Everyone's gaze followed his finger and landed on Ethan Blackwood, who was slowly walking out of the cabin, still wearing his wet clothes. His face was a little pale, but his eyes were clear and bright, and he appeared relatively calm. At this critical moment, Ethan Blackwood, thinking quickly and decisively, instantly severed a rabbit's head with a single stroke and tossed the bleeding rabbit into the distant stream. In an instant, the piranhas in the stream, as if receiving a signal, all furiously swam towards where the rabbit had fallen into the water. In just half a minute, a large rabbit was reduced to nothing but scattered white bones. Ethan Blackwood didn't hesitate. He immediately slit the throat of the other rabbit and threw it into the piranha-infested waters. The piranhas began a new round of frantic feeding. Finally, driven by the current, and with the electric eel and 2 rabbits as food, after such a long delay, Ethan Blackwood filled all the containers with water. An entire hiking backpack full, enough for 6 people to drink for 2 days. Such was the harsh reality. The water, acquired through immense effort, would only last for 2 days. "All right, let's go." Ethan Blackwood slung a backpack full of water over his shoulders and said. Sophia Ashbourne nodded. Suddenly, she noticed many bees flying among the nearby flowers. "Ethan Blackwood, look. There's a beehive there." Sophia Ashbourne stared at a spot under a tree, her almond eyes glistening slightly. She couldn't help but lick her lips. Most girls have a natural fondness for sweets, and Sophia Ashbourne was no exception. However, since being stranded on the deserted island, so many days had passed without her tasting anything sweet that she had almost forgotten what sweetness felt like. "Want some honey?" Ethan Blackwood raised an eyebrow and asked. I don't want to." Sophia Ashbourne nodded instinctively. Then, realizing her action, shook her head like a rattle. It wasn't that she didn't want to, but with so many bees, how could anyone get honey? They would surely be stung to death. Sophia Ashbourne felt a pang of embarrassment recalling how she had blurted out her thoughts. Her proud nature getting the better of her. "You don't want to eat it, you said that." Ethan Blackwood simply smiled and started a fire on the spot. Under Sophia Ashbourne's puzzled gaze, Ethan Blackwood wrapped the burning dry grass in leaves from the Monstera deliciosa plant and then threw it beneath the beehive. Immediately, countless flying bees, upon being smoked by the white mist, began frantically drilling towards the honeycomb. However, all the bees flew towards the largest honeycomb. This is an instinctive reaction of bees when they perceive danger. They first fly to the largest hive. Moreover, a single hole can accommodate more than one bee. That is to say, there were no bees outside at this time, and the smaller beehives were all empty. Ethan Blackwood seized the opportunity, rushed forward, and plucked 2 small beehives in one go. Sweet, golden honey immediately flowed out, making Sophia Ashbourne's eyes widen. Alas, such good honey, yet Sophia Ashbourne doesn't like to eat it. Ethan Blackwood shook his head, a look of regret on his face. Sophia Ashbourne's almond eyes widened. She stammered for a long time but couldn't utter a word. Finally, she stamped her foot, pouted her small mouth, and walked forward with a huff. The more she walked, the more aggrieved she felt, her eyes even welling up. Where did she ever say she didn't like eating? Why wouldn't he give it to her then? Here for you. Just as Sophia Ashbourne felt wronged, Ethan Blackwood's sly smile appeared in her line of sight. I absolutely refuse. Sophia Ashbourne instinctively refused. The moment she finished speaking, she wanted to slap herself twice. Chinese letter was truly an incurable disease. It wouldn't be cured without dying. Don't throw them away on my account. I don't like sweets either. Ethan Blackwood said, shrugging. Hold on. Sophia Ashbourne quickly interjected. Listen up. It's not that I wanted to eat it. It's just that I couldn't stand by and watch you waste food. Yes. That's it. Sophia Ashbourne was pleased with the excuse she had found for herself. Raising her pale chin, she took the honey from Ethan Blackwood's hand. Yet, the excited glint in her eyes had already betrayed her. During her time on the island, Sophia Ashbourne's refined, eating habits had largely disappeared. Now, encountering a sweet treat she loved, she immediately began to devour it. Her fair cheeks were covered in sticky honey. This is for Isabel Hawthorne. Sophia Ashbourne ate half, licking her lips with lingering satisfaction, and decided to save the other one. Eat it, we still have a long way to go. Keeping honey with you could cause trouble, Ethan Blackwood said instead. There's no helping it. For many animals with keen senses of smell in the jungle, something as fragrant as honey is a rare delicacy. Bears, for instance, are very fond of honey. If we were to attract a bear, that would be the end of us. Oh. All right then, Tilda. Sophia Ashbourne was also a bit worried about attracting wild animals, so she quickly began to enjoy the other half of the honey. After finishing, she smacked her lips contentedly. In the past, Sophia Ashbourne wouldn't even deign to eat raw honey like this. Her standards for food were exceptionally high. But now, she finds it to be the most delicious sweet in the world. Finally, the two managed to bring the water back to the shore. Not without some frights. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Ethan Blackwood and Sophia Ashbourne retrieve the water. Otherwise, they would have immediately run out of water. Water, give me water. Maxwell Goldstein, who had been lying prostrate on the ground, suddenly scrambled up and ran over, his eyes gleaming green. Chopping down 20 bamboo stalks had nearly taken his life. Ethan Blackwood stacked all the bamboo, then began choosing a spot to build the shelter. The main consideration this time was safety. Therefore, Ethan Blackwood turned his attention to higher ground. If the terrain is too low, then when beasts approach, it will be as if they are treading on flat ground, offering no defense whatsoever. Ethan Blackwood's gaze finally settled on a massive natural rock. Sophia Ashbourne looked at Lucas Everhart. Her beautiful eyes filled with anticipation. Lucas Everhart stared at the large rock, then shook his head, a hint of disappointment in his voice. This rock is too big, even if it contained emeralds. We wouldn't be able to move it. His words instantly disheartened classmates. They glanced at Ethan Blackwood, who was still staring intently at the rock. Isabel Hawthorne frowned. Ethan Blackwood ignored everyone, carefully observing the rock. After a moment, he suddenly smiled. Who said we can't move it? At Ethan Blackwood's words, everyone looked at him, puzzled. Isabel Hawthorne asked, Ethan Blackwood, do you plan to blast it? Ethan Blackwood shook his head. No need to be so troublesome. He turned to the crew members. Is there a crane or a lifting device on the ship? A crew member nodded. Yes. We have a small crane. Ethan Blackwood motioned with his hand. Great, bring it over. Be careful of the surrounding rocks and trees. The crew members quickly brought the small remote-controlled crane. The crane was not large, primarily used for lifting small cargo on board. Ethan Blackwood controlled the crane arm and carefully wrapped a thick steel cable around the massive rock. He adjusted the angle several times to ensure it was secure. With the crane ready, Ethan Blackwood looked at Lucas Everhart. Lucas Everhart, come here and help me lift it. Lucas Everhart was stunned. Although the crane was small, it still required considerable effort to lift such a large rock. Lucas Everhart stepped forward, placed his hands on the rock, and exchanged a look with Ethan Blackwood. Ethan Blackwood nodded slightly. All right. Lift. As Ethan Blackwood shouted, he pushed his hands down, leveraging the rock with all his strength. Lucas Everhart also pushed hard, his face flushed. The rock slowly began to rise. Everyone held their breath, watching the scene unfold. Sophia Ashbourne clasped her hands nervously. Isabel Hawthorne's eyes were wide, a look of disbelief on her face. Ryan Caldwell clutched his fists, his body leaning forward as if to help. The massive rock was slowly lifted, exposing the ground beneath it. A small, dark cave entrance appeared, narrow and deep, shrouded in shadows. A cold, damp aura emanated from it, causing a shiver to run down everyone's spine. Captain Sullivan looked at Ethan Blackwood, his face full of disbelief. Ethan Blackwood, you really did it. Ethan Blackwood smiled faintly. It's nothing, I just have more strength. Lucas Everhart, breathing heavily, looked at Ethan Blackwood. Ethan Blackwood, your strength is astonishing. Ethan Blackwood merely smiled, not explaining. In reality, he had used some of his internal energy to assist. Otherwise, even with his strength, it would have been difficult to lift such a massive rock with just the small crane. Sophia Ashbourne, seeing the dark cave, asked nervously, Ethan Blackwood, what's inside? Ethan Blackwood frowned slightly. I don't know for now, but I think it might be useful. He turned to Lucas Everhart and Ryan Caldwell. You too. Keep an eye on this rock. Don't let anyone touch it. Lucas Everhart and Ryan Caldwell nodded solemnly. They understood that this rock was unusual. Classmates were all curious, wanting to see what was inside the cave. Madeline Spencer looked at Ethan Blackwood, her eyes sparkling. Ethan Blackwood, are you going to explore it? Ethan Blackwood nodded. Yes. I need to see what's in there. Victor Harrington immediately stood up. Ethan Blackwood, I'll go with you. Lucas Everhart and Ryan Caldwell also wanted to join, but Ethan Blackwood refused. No need. It's enough with Victor Harrington. You two stay here and guard the rock. Ethan Blackwood looked at the dark cave, a glimmer of light in his eyes. He cautiously stepped forward and slowly entered the cave. Victor Harrington followed closely. The cave was very narrow, barely allowing one person to pass at a time. The air inside was cold and damp, with a faint earthy smell. As they went deeper, the cave became darker, and the path grew increasingly rugged, with many sharp rocks and uneven surfaces. Ethan Blackwood walked carefully, paying attention to his surroundings. Victor Harrington followed him, constantly on alert. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from deep within the cave. Ethan Blackwood immediately stopped, his expression serious. Victor Harrington also stopped, his hand gripping the dagger at his waist. A low growl like a wild beast echoed through the cave. making the air tremble. Ethan Blackwood exchanged a look with Victor Harrington. They both knew that there was something inside. Ethan Blackwood carefully moved forward, his senses heightened. As they approached the source of the sound, a faint light appeared in the distance. When they got closer, they saw a huge, magnificent cavern. The cavern was filled with countless emeralds embedded in the walls, sparkling with dazzling green light. Ethan Blackwood and Victor Harrington were both stunned. They had never imagined that such a treasure trove would be hidden deep within this cave. Victor Harrington's eyes widened, his mouth agape. Emeralds, so many emeralds. Ethan Blackwood was also incredibly surprised, but he quickly regained his composure. He examined the emeralds carefully and noticed that these emeralds varied in size and quality. Some were large and flawless, while others were small and had impurities. Ethan Blackwood picked up an emerald, feeling its cool, smooth texture. He then turned to Victor Harrington. "Victor Harrington, these emeralds are very valuable, but we need to be careful. There might be creatures guarding them." Victor Harrington nodded. "I understand." He looked around the cavern. "Ethan Blackwood, do you think there are other things in here besides emeralds?" Ethan Blackwood paused for a moment, then shook his head. "I don't know. Let's look around carefully." As they explored, a powerful aura suddenly emanated from the deepest part of the cavern, accompanied by a low growl. Ethan Blackwood and Victor Harrington immediately looked in that direction. A colossal python, its body as thick as a barrel, slowly emerged from the shadows. Its scales shimmered with a metallic green luster, and its eyes glowed with a chilling yellow light. It was clearly the creature guarding the emeralds. Victor Harrington's face turned pale. "It's a python." Ethan Blackwood's expression was grave. He knew that this python was very dangerous. He pulled out the dagger at his waist, ready to face it. The giant python slowly slithered towards them, its head raised, its forked tongue flicking in and out, sensing their presence. "Be careful, Victor Harrington," Ethan Blackwood whispered. "This python is extremely powerful." Victor Harrington nodded, his hand gripping his dagger tightly. He knew that this was going to be a tough battle. The giant python suddenly lunged, its massive body coiling and striking with incredible speed. Ethan Blackwood dodged, narrowly avoiding its attack, then countered with a swift stab of his dagger. The dagger pierced the python's scales, but only shallowly. Causing a slight scratch, the python let out an angry hiss. Victor Harrington also attacked, attempting to distract the python. However, the python was too powerful, its movements agile and formidable. Ethan Blackwood quickly realized that they couldn't defeat the python head-on. He needed to find its weakness. He observed the python's movements, its attack patterns, and suddenly noticed a faint glow emanating from its head. Ethan Blackwood's eyes lit up. "Victor Harrington, attack its head. There's something there." Victor Harrington understood and immediately directed his attacks towards the python's head. The python, realizing their intention, became even more furious, attacking them relentlessly. After a fierce battle, Ethan Blackwood managed to find an opening. He lunged forward, his dagger aimed precisely at the glowing spot on the python's head. With a powerful thrust, his dagger pierced the python's skull. The giant python shuddered violently, then slowly collapsed. After a few convulsive movements, it became completely still. Ethan Blackwood and Victor Harrington both exhaled deeply. Their clothes soaked with sweat, they had narrowly escaped death. Ethan Blackwood approached the python's head and found a small, crystal-clear gem embedded there. It was emitting a faint, ethereal glow. Ethan Blackwood carefully removed the gem. "What is this?" Victor Harrington asked, his eyes wide. Ethan Blackwood examined the gem closely. "I think this is a spiritual gem. It contains a powerful spiritual energy." He then looked around the cavern. He noticed that the emeralds were no longer glowing as brightly as before. He surmised that the spiritual gem was the source of the cavern's energy and the reason for the emerald's vibrancy. Ethan Blackwood put the spiritual gem away. He turned to go back. Victor Harrington nodded excitedly. They spent some time collecting a good amount of emeralds, choosing the largest and most valuable ones. As they emerged from the cave, classmates were anxiously waiting. When they saw Ethan Blackwood and Victor Harrington, everyone rushed forward. Sophia Ashbourne's eyes lit up. Ethan Blackwood. You're back. What did you find? Ethan Blackwood smiled. It's a treasure trove. He showed them the emeralds he had collected. Everyone gasped in amazement. Lucas Everhart stared at the emeralds, his eyes wide. So many emeralds, this is incredible. Isabel Hawthorne and Madeline Spencer also looked at the emeralds with excitement. Emily Winter's eyes twinkled. Maxwell Goldstein was speechless, utterly shocked. Classmates were all thrilled. They surrounded Ethan Blackwood, asking him about the adventure. Ethan Blackwood briefly recounted their encounter with the giant python and the spiritual gem. Lucas Everhart looked at Ethan Blackwood with admiration. Ethan Blackwood, you're amazing. You actually defeated such a powerful python. Ethan Blackwood simply smiled. He knew that this adventure would be a memorable experience for everyone. After a short rest, Ethan Blackwood and Victor Harrington helped the crew members secure the collected emeralds. They also covered the entrance to the cave with rocks to prevent others from finding it. The next day, the treasure hunt continued. This time, everyone was more enthusiastic and cooperative. Ethan Blackwood's reputation had grown immensely, and his leadership skills were widely recognized. The remaining days of the treasure hunt were fruitful. They found more caves, some containing ancient artifacts, others with rare herbal medicines. Each discovery brought excitement and joy to classmates. Finally, the treasure hunt came to an end. It was a journey filled with adventure, discovery, and unforgettable memories. As they sailed back, Ethan Blackwood stood on the deck, gazing at the receding coastline. He had not only found treasure, but had also gained valuable experience and formed stronger bonds with his friends. The spiritual gem he found in the cave would be a powerful asset for his future cultivation. He looked forward to what awaited him in the future. This rock formation is incredibly tall, with a flat and spacious summit. Without tools, it would be impossible to ascend, let alone for wild animals. It's safe to say that building a dwelling there would offer defense against most invasions. Furthermore, due to its elevated position, one could observe the surrounding situation and maintain the upper hand. Once the decision was made, action was immediate. First, a bamboo ladder was crafted. After ascending, construction of the shelters began. By evening, 3 shelters were finally completed. Sophia Ashbourne and Isabel Hawthorne shared a room. Emily Winters and Madeline Spencer shared a room, while Ethan Blackwood was with Maxwell Goldstein. That greasy old man. If he were to stay with the girls, who knows what might happen? Once night falls, the bamboo ladder will be pulled up, completely cutting off the path up. This way, safety will be greatly enhanced. Even sleeping will be much more peaceful than before. However, midnight arrived. Suddenly, a woman entered Ethan Blackwood's shed. Madeline Spencer. She walked in, dressed in a way that was both revealing and concealing, constantly casting suggestive glances at Ethan Blackwood. Madeline, I know you miss me terribly, but please, not like this. Ethan Blackwood is here, it wouldn't look good. Maxwell Goldstein said, swallowing and rubbing his hands. Get lost. Madeline Spencer gave him a cold look, but quickly transformed into a radiant smile, staring at Ethan Blackwood and walking towards him step by step. Her shoulders twitched, and the strap instantly fell off, along with the only piece of clothing on her upper body. The next morning, Ethan Blackwood and Sophia Ashbourne went to the police station again, providing a detailed account of everything that happened on the cruise ship. Although their statements were comprehensive, the police were quite skeptical, finding it difficult to fully believe their narrative. Meanwhile, Isabel Hawthorne reported to the police that Lucas Everhart was missing and also recounted the bizarre events that occurred on the cruise ship. Her statement largely corroborated Ethan Blackwood's and Sophia Ashbourne's. At this point, the police finally began to take their accounts seriously. However, despite dispatching a large number of officers to search the area where the cruise ship was found, they uncovered no significant clues. The entire cruise ship had vanished without a trace, leaving the police baffled. Just as the police were at a loss, a student named Ryan Caldwell came forward to report his disappearance. He stated that he had been to the cruise ship and corroborated many of Ethan Blackwood's observations. Yet, he also claimed that Ethan Blackwood was the true culprit, asserting that he secretly practiced a sinister magic. Ryan Caldwell also said that the reason he was able to escape was because he pretended to join Ethan Blackwood. Following Ryan Caldwell's report, other classmates who had been on the cruise ship also came forward to report. Several crew members also contacted the police, providing testimonies that implicated Ethan Blackwood as the mastermind behind the events. For a time, all evidence pointed to Ethan Blackwood. The police promptly issued an arrest warrant for him. However, Ethan Blackwood had already vanished without a trace. The police launched a large-scale search, but found no clues regarding his whereabouts. Sophia Ashbourne was devastated. She refused to believe the police's conclusions, firmly convinced that Ethan Blackwood was innocent. Isabel Hawthorne, Madeline Spencer, and Emily Winters also stood by Ethan Blackwood, believing in his innocence. But due to mounting pressure from public opinion, even those who initially supported Ethan Blackwood gradually began to waver, and some even started to turn against him. A month later, Lucas Everhart was found dead in the woods outside the city, his body bearing numerous bite marks. The police immediately suspected that the mysterious creature that attacked the cruise ship was responsible. Under immense public pressure, the police announced the monster was a mutated wolf, which they quickly contained. However, people remained unconvinced, believing the official explanation was a mere formality. As the police continued their investigation, Lucas Everhart's grandfather, Maxwell Goldstein, hired a private investigator named Victor Harrington to look into the case. Victor Harrington's investigation uncovered a hidden secret. Captain Sullivan and the entire crew of the cruise ship had seemingly vanished without a trace. The police's previous explanation that the ship was hijacked by monsters, and the captain and crew fled to safety, was revealed to be a lie. Additionally, Victor Harrington discovered that Captain Sullivan's family had received a substantial sum of money, an amount so large it was impossible for a regular family to earn. Victor Harrington shared his findings with Maxwell Goldstein, who immediately understood that the police were concealing something. However, without concrete evidence, he couldn't force them to reinvestigate. Meanwhile, the public's attention was gradually waning, and the case of the cruise ship was slowly fading from memory. In a hidden corner of the city, a man named Ethan Blackwood watched everything unfold, observing the public's reaction and the shifting focus of the police. A faint smile, tinged with a hint of bitterness, appeared on his lips. Chapter 27, Isabel Hawthorne Goes Missing. Ethan Blackwood swiftly retrieved the fish that had been caught. Lucas Everhart and Sophia Ashbourne hurried over, their eyes gleaming. "This fish, it's huge," Lucas Everhart exclaimed, his eyes wide with surprise. Sophia Ashbourne was equally astonished, covering her mouth with her hand. "Wow, Ethan Blackwood. You're amazing. How did you catch such a big fish?" Ethan Blackwood smiled faintly. "It's just a bit of luck." Isabel Hawthorne and the classmates also gathered around, marveling at the size of the fish. Their faces were filled with admiration for Ethan Blackwood. "Ethan Blackwood, you're incredible. We've been fishing all morning and haven't caught anything, and you just effortlessly caught such a giant fish," Isabel Hawthorne said, with a mix of envy and admiration. "That's right, Ethan Blackwood is truly amazing. No wonder Sophia Ashbourne likes him. Not only is he handsome, but he's also incredibly capable. The classmates began discussing amongst themselves, their gazes fixed on Ethan Blackwood as if seeing a treasure. Sophia Ashbourne's face flushed slightly upon hearing their words, but her eyes held a hint of sweetness. A crew member ran over, equally surprised by the sight of the fish. "Wow, young man. You're really something. This fish must weigh at least 20 to 30 pounds. Ethan Blackwood smiled without saying anything. Mr. Ryan Caldwell, Mr. Victor Harrington, Ms. Madeline Spencer, and Ms. Emily Winters. Please come and see. This young man caught a big fish, a really big one." The crew member shouted towards Ryan Caldwell and the others. Upon hearing this, Ryan Caldwell, Victor Harrington, and the others walked over. When they saw the fish in Ethan Blackwood's hand, their expressions changed slightly. "This fish looks like a king mackerel," Ryan Caldwell said, his eyes narrowing slightly. Victor Harrington, with a professional eye, immediately recognized the fish. "Indeed, it's a king mackerel. This type of fish is rare in these waters, and it's quite valuable." Madeline Spencer and Emily Winters also showed surprise in their eyes. Maxwell Goldstein, seeing the king mackerel, felt a pang of envy. He had been fishing for so long and hadn't caught anything, while Ethan Blackwood easily reeled in such a valuable fish. This made him feel somewhat disgruntled. "What's so great about catching a fish? It's just luck," Maxwell Goldstein muttered under his breath, though his voice was loud enough for those nearby to hear. Sophia Ashbourne immediately retorted, "Maxwell Goldstein, what are you saying? Ethan Blackwood caught it with his skill. It has nothing to do with luck." "Exactly, if it were just luck. Why didn't you catch it?" Isabel Hawthorne added, her words sharp. Maxwell Goldstein's face reddened, not expecting to be rebutted by Sophia Ashbourne and Isabel Hawthorne. He glared angrily at Ethan Blackwood. Ethan Blackwood remained calm, as if he hadn't heard Maxwell Goldstein's words. He directly handed the king mackerel to the crew member. "Give this fish to Captain Sullivan and ask him to prepare it for lunch for everyone." The crew member respectfully took the king mackerel. "All right, young Master Ethan Blackwood, I'll go prepare it now." Watching the crew member leave, Ethan Blackwood turned to Sophia Ashbourne. "Do you still want a fish?" "Yes, I want to fish with you." Sophia Ashbourne nodded vigorously, her face full of joy. Maxwell Goldstein knew exactly what kind of woman Madeline Spencer was. She had previously used manipulation to get into his bed, and now she was using similar tactics to approach Ethan Blackwood. It's very simple. Before, at the company, he was the boss, so Madeline Spencer naturally sought him out. But on this deserted island, the current boss is clearly Ethan Blackwood. Given Madeline Spencer's personality, acting this way is quite normal. "Ethan Blackwood, I'll excuse myself for now." Maxwell Goldstein showed no sign of embarrassment in his eyes. Madeline Spencer was merely a plaything. To whom she was given, did it truly matter? The most important thing now is to appease Ethan Blackwood and Sophia Ashbourne. After all, if he remains the boss upon their return, what kind of woman couldn't he find? But if he displeases Ethan Blackwood, he might even lose his life after Sophia Ashbourne discusses it with him. "Little brother Ethan Blackwood, let big sister help you relax a bit." Madeline Spencer's tone was utterly flirtatious, and she was confident that any man would be unable to resist. This was because she had always relied on such tactics to get ahead, and they had never failed, no matter the circumstances. Snore. However, the reality instantly petrified Madeline Spencer. Ethan Blackwood didn't even spare her a glance, directly falling asleep and beginning to snore. Madeline Spencer's face flushed red, then paled. Never before had she felt such defeat, and resentment welled up in her heart. She snorted coldly and exited the shelter. Maxwell Goldstein gazed deeply at Ethan Blackwood, a hint of surprise in his heart. This young man, not even 20, possessed such a disposition. One had to realize few could withstand Madeline Spencer's allure. No wonder even a prestigious young lady could withstand Madeline Spencer's allure. No wonder even a prestigious young lady like Sophia Ashbourne, daughter of Ethan Blackwood, would favor this young man. The next day, Ethan Blackwood woke up early. A habitual gaze stretched into the distance, confirming the absence of any rescue vessels. However, there wasn't an overwhelming sense of disappointment. After all, there wasn't much energy left for disappointment, and gradually it became a norm. Ethan Blackwood still had something on his mind, the traps he had set in the jungle. A day has passed by now, if there's anything to collect. It's time to go check. All those wild wolf entrails left there must have been eaten by beasts by now. Whether anything fell into a trap, that depends on luck. Maxwell Goldstein. You're coming with me into the jungle. Ethan Blackwood woke Maxwell Goldstein and instructed him. He is a man, after all, and possessed of greater strength. If they truly captured a wild boar, and Ethan Blackwood had to carry it back alone, 100 kilograms would exhaust him to death. Handsome, when we get into the jungle, you have to protect me. Maxwell Goldstein was terrified, stammering, since arriving on this deserted island. He had never ventured deep into the jungle, only cutting bamboo on the outskirts. Ethan Blackwood's lips twitched, non-committal. The two of them, equipped, entered the jungle and headed towards the trap-laying area. When he reached a short distance from the trap, Ethan Blackwood stopped, feeling completely unwell, and quickly hid in the nearby bushes. Beside the trap was clearly a juvenile black bear. This small black bear was pacing back and forth beside the trap. Evidently, it very much wanted to eat the wild boar inside the trap, but didn't know how to get down there. Handsome, there's a bear. Let's get back quickly. Maxwell Goldstein's face was ashen. He had seen many bears at the zoo, but this was his first time seeing one in the wild. Even if it was a small bear, a human would be no match for it. Ethan Blackwood frowned, and by all accounts they should have left immediately. However, Ethan Blackwood had already seen a wild boar perish in a trap. That wild boar was huge, estimated to weigh at least 120 kilograms. If it were all made into smoked meat, it would provide food for a very long time. Ethan Blackwood was truly unwilling to just give up and leave. Ethan Blackwood fiddled with his bow and arrow, torn between attacking the small black bear, but the bear had thick hide, and arrows made from bulrush roots, even if they could pierce its skin, would likely cause little harm and only anger it. Must they really give up on this wild boar? Handsome man, look, we can't get that wild boar back. But there are 2 frogs here. We can catch them to eat, which counts as cutting our losses. Right. Maxwell Goldstein pointed to a colorful frog on the ground and said to Ethan Blackwood. He truly was a merchant to his core. Even with the loss of a larger catch, he could still find a way to cut his losses, no matter how small. A frog was still meat. Eat what? This is a poison dart frog. Its skin is toxic. If you eat it, you'll be as good as dead. Ethan Blackwood gave Maxwell Goldstein a sidelong glance and said. Maxwell Goldstein swallowed hard, filled with lingering fear. This tropical rainforest was truly dangerous. Anything could be lethal. However, Ethan Blackwood suddenly paused, as if realizing something. Poison dart frogs are so named because indigenous tribes extract the toxins from their skin and apply them to darts for hunting. This is how they earned the name poison dart frog. Ethan Blackwood grew excited. If ordinary arrows couldn't deal with the small black bear, what about arrows coated with poison? Just do it. Ethan Blackwood aimed an arrow at a poison dart frog. With a swift, powerful shot, he instantly killed the frog. Then, he directly pulled out the arrow. The arrow that had killed the poison dart frog effectively had its arrowhead covered in poison. Immediately, Ethan Blackwood strung his bow and aimed an arrow at the small black bear. Whoosh! With a whoosh, The arrow sliced through the air and instantly pierced the little black bear. Roar! At once, the little black bear let out a roar. While its roar wasn't as terrifying as an adult black bear's, it was still frightening enough. Immediately after, it furiously charged towards Ethan Blackwood. Ethan Blackwood's heart was in his throat. That last arrow was a gamble. He was betting that the poison on the arrow would affect the small black bear. If it didn't work, Ethan Blackwood's situation would be extremely dangerous. He had previously managed to scare away the black bear by shouting loudly, but that was before he had provoked it. This little black bear, clearly angered by the arrow wound, was now filled with endless fury. It seemed it wouldn't rest until it tore the person before it to shreds. Maxwell Goldstein was terrified, having wet himself. This world was truly dangerous, just stepping out to check on prey. And he was nearly torn apart by a black bear. Bang! But just then, a loud bang was heard. Maxwell Goldstein opened his eyes and immediately saw that the little black bear, which had been charging wildly, had collapsed to the ground and was lying there motionless. Dead! Maxwell Goldstein was overjoyed. This was truly a narrow escape from death. A poisonous dart frog trying to poison a black bear. It only managed to paralyze it. Hurry and follow me to move the wild boar, Ethan Blackwood quickly said. Maxwell Goldstein dared not delay, quickly following Ethan Blackwood to the trap. Together, they lifted out the wild boar that had only recently died and sprinted towards the edge of the jungle. Handsome man. Why don't we just butcher this bear too? It would be more profitable. A merchant never thinks he earns too much. Before, when he almost couldn't get wild boars, he would have thought about using poison dart frogs to cut his losses. Now that he has wild boars, he even wants to bring bears back. Kill it? Nonsense. Adolescent bear cubs live with their adult mothers. If you kill it, you'll anger a mother bear. She will undoubtedly track you down by scent. And she won't stop until you're dead. Ethan Blackwood had no intention of killing the small black bear from the start. Rendering it paralyzed and immobile was the best possible outcome. This way, by the time the mother bear found her cub, it would likely have recovered. As long as there were no casualties, the mother bear should not burst out of the jungle to cause trouble for humans. Upon hearing this, Maxwell Goldstein immediately shivered. The thought of an adult black bear targeting him and even tracking him by scent filled him with immense dread. The two dared not linger. The mother bear was surely nearby, though the wild boar was heavy. They exerted all their strength, rushing out of the jungle as fast as they could. After returning to the beach, everyone had already woken up. Seeing Ethan Blackwood and Maxwell Goldstein bring back such a large wild boar, everyone became incredibly excited. This was food. Ethan Blackwood wasted no time and immediately began to process the wild boar. Fortunately, it seemed to have died in the trap during the night, so its temperature wasn't high. And there was still time to process it. If it had stayed in the trap for an entire day, the meat would have spoiled in such high temperatures. Maxwell Goldstein, however, reveled in this feeling, carrying the prey back. The expressions of adoration from everyone made him extremely satisfied. He completely forgot that his pants were soaking wet. Moreover, the admiring gazes of the crowd were not directed at him, but at Ethan Blackwood behind him. All the wild boar meat was processed and rubbed with salt, then set to be smoked. The thoroughly cleaned innards were used to make a large pot of offal soup. Everyone gathered around, eating with great enthusiasm. Everyone here, except for Ethan Blackwood, would absolutely never have eaten these foods before. They all hold distinguished positions and are accustomed to gourmet dining. Yet now, each one of them is eating with more fervor than the last. During the meal, Madeline Spencer intentionally or unintentionally sat next to Ethan Blackwood, occasionally brushing against him, clearly hinting at something. Sophia Ashbourne's eyes were practically spitting fire. He was already cursing Madeline Spencer endlessly in his mind. Fortunately, She saw that Ethan Blackwood did not respond, but instead deliberately distanced himself, which made her nod in satisfaction. Madeline Spencer's mood grew increasingly gloomy as she saw Ethan Blackwood keeping his distance. She prided herself on her striking looks and a temperament that easily attracted men, far surpassing that of an average young woman. Yet this young man was so cold, clearly showing his disdain for her. Madeline Spencer could not stand being looked at in such a way, and deep down, her heart gradually began to twist. Ethan Blackwood couldn't be bothered with what this woman was thinking. After all, he somewhat looked down on people who could easily go to bed with others for money and status. If he got involved, there was no telling what problems might arise. After finishing their meal, Ethan Blackwood packed half of the smoked wild boar meat into his hiking backpack. On a deserted island, unexpected situations can arise at any time. So it's important to pack food properly. In case of an emergency, the food can be directly taken and carried away. This way, the predicament of having no food during migration is avoided. Ethan Blackwood. Isabel Hawthorne went into the jungle to relieve herself a while ago and hasn't come out yet. I'm a bit worried. At this moment, Sophia Ashbourne walked over, a worried expression on her face, and said to Ethan Blackwood. Everyone remained silent. Ethan Blackwood, what did you do? Sophia Ashbourne asked, staring at Ethan Blackwood. Ethan Blackwood simply shrugged. Nothing. Just defending myself. Who told them to provoke me first? Do you know who they are? Sophia Ashbourne was almost driven to tears by Ethan Blackwood's nonchalant attitude. Before Ethan Blackwood could speak, Isabel Hawthorne suddenly ran over to Sophia Ashbourne and said, Sophia Ashbourne, let's go. There's no point talking to him. Right, let's go. Lucas Everhart also walked over, his eyes full of resentment as he glared at Ethan Blackwood. Ethan Blackwood, just you wait. You'll regret this. With that, Sophia Ashbourne, Isabel Hawthorne, Lucas Everhart, and the classmates left, looking at their receding figures. Ethan Blackwood chuckled faintly. Regret? Ethan Blackwood, have never known what regret means in my dictionary. Boss, your actions were truly incredible today. Ryan Caldwell gave Ethan Blackwood a thumbs up in admiration. He followed the classmates but found himself still too far behind. Ethan Blackwood had reached the peak. Victor Harrington, however, was somewhat worried. Ethan Blackwood, you just injured so many crew members. What if they come back for revenge later? Revenge, let them try. Ethan Blackwood laughed scornfully, not taking it to heart at all. Besides, we are still on the high seas. If they really want to get revenge, they'll have to consider the consequences. On the other side, Sophia Ashbourne and the others quickly found the captain. Captain. Something terrible happened. Sophia Ashbourne rushed into the control room, her face pale. The captain was currently talking to Madeline Spencer and Emily Winters. Upon seeing Sophia Ashbourne, he frowned and asked, Miss Sophia Ashbourne. What happened? Why are you so flustered? Sophia Ashbourne quickly explained what had just transpired. When the captain heard that Ethan Blackwood had injured over a dozen crew members, he immediately paled. What did you say? He injured over a dozen of my crew members. The captain's expression changed dramatically. This is a serious matter. He disrupted public order and assaulted crew members. I have the right to arrest him. Captain, this isn't good. At this moment, Maxwell Goldstein suddenly rushed in, his face even paler than Sophia Ashbourne's. Captain, something big has happened. Captain Sullivan and his pirates have boarded our ship. They're already engaging in a fierce battle with our crew members. What? The captain's eyes widened in disbelief. How is that possible? We're still far from the pirate-infested waters. How could they have appeared here? I don't know either. But it's true. Maxwell Goldstein was on the verge of tears. Captain Sullivan is incredibly powerful. Several of our crew members have already been killed by him. Captain, what should we do? Chapter 28. Isabel Hawthorne attacked. one arrow to the death, and decided it was probably best to wait until the storm subsided before heading out. He checked the time. It was almost noon. The group was supposed to meet at 10 a.m. But the storm had delayed everyone. Now, only Sophia Ashbourne and Isabel Hawthorne were with him. Ryan Caldwell, Lucas Everhart, Madeline Spencer, and Emily Winters were still nowhere to be seen. Maxwell Goldstein said he'd treat us to a big meal when we returned from our outing. Why don't we go find a restaurant first? Isabel Hawthorne suggested. Her stomach rumbling, Sophia Ashbourne agreed. Let's go find something to eat. We can call the others later. Ethan Blackwood nodded. He tried calling Lucas Everhart and Ryan Caldwell, but there was no answer. The three of them found a small restaurant by the sea and ordered some food. Just as they finished eating, the storm finally began to abate. Not long after, Lucas Everhart, Ryan Caldwell, Madeline Spencer, and Emily Winters arrived, their faces pale. "What happened to you all?" Sophia Ashbourne asked, concerned. Ryan Caldwell explained. "We got caught in a sudden downpour and had to find shelter. We just waited for the rain to stop." With everyone finally assembled, the group decided to head to the pier. They planned to take a boat out to sea for some fishing, a class activity organized by the school. Other classmates were already there, waiting in line to board. The ship was a large, luxurious vessel. Most of the classmates were excited, but some, like Ethan Blackwood, were more cautious. He noticed some strange symbols on the ship's flag that didn't seem right. Before boarding, the crew members checked their tickets. As Ethan Blackwood stepped onto the deck, he felt a strange sense of unease. The ship was vast. With 3 levels, many classmates were already exploring, some on the lower deck, others running around on the upper decks. Ethan Blackwood walked to the railing and looked out at the sea. Sophia Ashbourne joined him. "The sea is beautiful," she said. Suddenly, a loud noise erupted from the ship's cabin. Other classmates and crew members started screaming, running in panic. "What's going on?" Sophia Ashbourne asked, startled. Just then, a group of burly men with weapons rushed out of the cabin, shouting, "This ship is now under our control. Everyone, hands on your heads, or we'll open fire." The classmates and crew members were terrified. These were pirates. The pirates quickly took control of the ship. Their leader, Captain Sullivan, was a tall, burly man with a scar across his face. He ordered his men to round everyone up and gather their valuables. "Anyone who resists will be thrown overboard," he roared. Ryan Caldwell, Lucas Everhart, Madeline Spencer, Emily Winters, Isabel Hawthorne, and Sophia Ashbourne huddled together, terrified. Ethan Blackwood remained calm, observing the pirates carefully. He noticed that one of the pirates had a strange tattoo on his arm. Captain Sullivan announced, "We're not here to hurt anyone, just to take your money and valuables. Cooperate, and you'll be safe." But his words did little to reassure the panicked passengers. Ethan Blackwood knew they couldn't just stand by. He whispered to his friends, "We need to find a way to escape." He began to formulate a plan, his mind racing. This was going to be a long day. Ethan Blackwood frowned upon hearing this. Logically, a trip to the latrine, being on the edge of the jungle, should have meant a quick return. "I'll go take a look." Ethan Blackwood, having spoken, found a piece of wood, wrapped one end of it with palm fiber and camphor resin, and then placed it over the bonfire. Instantly, the torch ignited. Ethan Blackwood grabbed his weapon, holding a burning torch, and walked deeper into the jungle. There's a specific area designated for restrooms. Ethan Blackwood went into the jungle and searched the designated area first, but he couldn't find Isabel Hawthorne. Suddenly, a bad premonition enveloped his heart. "Ethan Blackwood, look!" Sophia Ashbourne suddenly cried out. Ethan Blackwood quickly walked over and saw a very inconspicuous sunflower seed on the ground. Isabel Hawthorne had previously discovered a sunflower patch and harvested many sunflower seeds, which she enjoyed as a snack and always carried with her. The presence of sunflower seeds here indicates that Isabel Hawthorne has been in this location. Even more shocking to Ethan Blackwood was discovering another sunflower seed not far away. "Is this a mark Isabel Hawthorne left behind?" Sophia Ashbourne exclaimed. Ethan Blackwood's brow furrowed. If that were the case, it meant Isabel Hawthorne hadn't encountered a wild beast. If a beast had carried a person away, it would have bitten them to death first. The fact that Isabel Hawthorne was still able to leave a trail of markings indicates she is still alive. Then there's only one possibility. She was kidnapped. With this in mind, Ethan Blackwood followed the markings and chased after them. Ethan Blackwood watched the news reports of the disaster unfolding across the major screens in his control room without an ounce of emotion. The once bustling cities were now desolate, their towering skyscrapers transformed into skeletal remains. The vibrant streets were eerily silent, devoid of the usual sounds of traffic and human activity. The entire world seemed to have been plunged into chaos overnight. The latest reports indicate a massive surge in seismic activity across the globe. A newscaster's voice resonated through the room, followed by unprecedented volcanic eruptions and tsunamis. Communications are down in many regions, and rescue efforts are severely hampered by the ongoing tremors and widespread destruction. The global death toll is estimated to be in the hundreds of millions and is rising rapidly. Ethan Blackwood switched off the main screen, the grim images disappearing instantly. He turned to face the young woman standing beside him, her face pale with worry. "Sophia Ashbourne, have you managed to contact your family?" His voice was calm, almost detached, a stark contrast to the turmoil outside. Sophia Ashbourne shook her head, her eyes distant. "No, Ethan Blackwood, all lines are down. I can't reach them." Her voice was barely a whisper, laden with sorrow. Ethan Blackwood placed a hand on her shoulder, a rare gesture of comfort from him. "Don't despair yet. The situation is chaotic, but there's still hope. Focus on what we can control." He then turned to Isabel Hawthorne, who was meticulously organizing data on a holographic display. "Isabel Hawthorne, what's the status of our ARC project?" Isabel Hawthorne, ever efficient, responded without looking up. "The ARC project is 90% complete." Ethan Blackwood, "We've managed to integrate the last crucial components despite the disruptions. We're on schedule for launch within 24 hours, provided there are no further major seismic events." "Excellent." Ethan Blackwood nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. "Ensure all protocols are being followed. We cannot afford any errors." He then walked over to Lucas Everhart, who was deep in thought, staring blankly at a complex star map. "Lucas Everhart, have you pinpointed a suitable destination yet?" Lucas Everhart, a brilliant astrophysicist, finally tore his gaze away from the map. "Yes." Ethan Blackwood, "I've identified a planet in the system. It's tidally locked, but its twilight zone appears to have conditions that could support human life. It's our best option within a reachable distance." Ethan Blackwood studied the star map. "Prepare the jump coordinates. We leave as soon as the ARC is ready. Inform the classmates to prepare for boarding." He paused, then added, "This is our last chance, our only hope for humanity's survival." As the final preparations for the ARC project commenced, the ground beneath them trembled violently. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the control room. "Ethan Blackwood, a massive earthquake, Richter 9.5. Isabel Hawthorne shouted over the din, her voice strained. "Tsunami warning, estimated impact in less than 10 minutes. All crew members secure the ARC," Ethan Blackwood bellowed, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Sophia Ashbourne, Lucas Everhart, Isabel Hawthorne, to your stations. We are initiating emergency launch sequence." The ARC, a colossal spaceship hidden deep underground, began its ascent. The tremor intensified, the earth groaning around them. Debris rained down as the tunnel entrance collapsed. Ryan Caldwell, the chief engineer, yelled, "Ethan Blackwood, the main power conduit is damaged. We're losing propulsion." "Bypass it. Reroute power from the auxiliary generators, Ethan Blackwood commanded, his face grim. We have to break free. Outside, the tsunami roared. A monstrous wall of water devouring everything in its path. The ground continued to convulse, tearing apart infrastructure. Buildings crumbled like sandcastles. Inside the Ark, the struggle was desperate. Victor Harrington, the security chief, reported, intruders at Sector Gamma. They're trying to force their way into the bridge. Repel them. Do not allow anyone to compromise the mission, Ethan Blackwood ordered, his eyes fixed on the ascent monitor. The Ark shuddered violently. Then, with a deafening roar, it broke through the debris, soaring into the ravaged sky just as the tsunami crashed over their former position. We made it, Sophia Ashbourne cried, tears streaming down her face. A mix of relief and sorrow. Not yet, Ethan Blackwood said, his gaze fixed on the view screen showing the destroyed planet below. This is just the beginning. He turned to Lucas Everhart. Lucas Everhart. Initiate warp drive. Set course for. As the Ark disappeared into the vastness of space, the ravaged Earth became a distant blue marble. A tomb of a once thriving civilization. The journey was long and arduous, fraught with unforeseen challenges. Resources dwindled, morale wavered, but Ethan Blackwood, with his unwavering resolve, pushed them onward. They encountered strange celestial phenomena, navigated treacherous asteroid fields, and faced internal conflicts. Madeline Spencer, the lead botanist, struggled to keep the limited plant life alive, their only source of fresh air and food. Emily Winters, the chief medical officer, worked tirelessly to combat new diseases that emerged in the confined environment of the Ark. One day, an alarm blared across the bridge. Ethan Blackwood. Unknown vessel approaching, Lucas Everhart exclaimed, his voice tense. It's not on any KNOWN Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. On the main view screen, a grotesque pirate ship, heavily armed, emerged from the void. Maxwell Goldstein, the Ark's financial backer and a man who valued profit above all else, cried out, Captain Sullivan, what do they want? Captain Sullivan's face, scarred and grim, appeared on the screen. We know what you carry, Ark, surrender your cargo, and we might let you live. Ethan Blackwood stared back, his face devoid of fear. You will get nothing from us. He turned to Victor Harrington. Prepare defenses, we will not yield. A fierce battle ensued. Lasers scorched the hull of the Ark. Explosions rocked the ship. Crew members fought bravely, but the pirates were relentless. Ryan Caldwell, severely wounded, managed to reroute power to the last functional laser turret. Ethan Blackwood. This is it. We have one shot. Fire, Ethan Blackwood commanded. A blinding beam of energy shot out, striking the pirate ship's bridge. The enemy vessel exploded in a fiery supernova. Silence descended upon the Ark they had survived, but at a heavy cost. Many crew members were lost, and the Ark was severely damaged. Report, Ethan Blackwood asked, his voice hoarse. Isabel Hawthorne, covered in soot and grime, responded. Life support is critical. We've lost primary propulsion. We're drifting. Lucas Everhart, his face pale, added, and we're still light years away from. Despair threatened to consume them, but Ethan Blackwood, observing the battered but resilient faces of his remaining crew, felt a resurgence of purpose. We will make it, he declared, his voice resolute. We have come too far to give up now. He rallied his crew, assigning tasks, instilling hope where there was none. They cannibalized damaged sections of the Ark, repairing what they could, improvising solutions. The journey continued, slower now, but forward nonetheless. Months turned into years. They faced starvation, disease, and the constant threat of the cold vacuum of space. But they also witnessed the birth of new stars, the beauty of nebulae, and the unwavering spirit of humanity. Finally, after what seemed an eternity, Lucas Everhart's voice, filled with awe, rang out, Ethan Blackwood, Kepler 186c, it's right there. On the view screen, a blue-green planet, shrouded in wisps of clouds, emerged from the darkness. It was their new home, a beacon of hope in the vast cosmic ocean. As the Arctis voice, filled with awe, rang out, Ethan Blackwood, Kepler 186c, it's right there. On the view screen, a blue-green planet, shrouded in wisps of clouds, emerged from the darkness. It was their new home, a beacon of hope in the vast cosmic ocean. As the ark descended through the alien atmosphere, a collective gasp swept through the bridge. The land below was lush and vibrant, teeming with strange, beautiful flora and fauna. The air was breathable, the sky a familiar blue. Ethan Blackwood stood at the viewport, gazing at their new world. Sophia Ashbourne stood beside him, tears of joy streaming down her face. Isabel Hawthorne and Lucas Everhart exchanged a tired but hopeful smile. "We made it," Sophia Ashbourne whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Ethan Blackwood nodded, a faint smile touching his lips, a rare sight. "Yes, we did." He turned to his exhausted but triumphant crew. "This is not an end but a new beginning. We will build a new home, a new civilization. On this planet, we will learn from our past and forge a better future for humanity." Deep within the jungle, a fire glowed. Isabel Hawthorne lay on the ground, her hands and ankles bound with hibiscus rope. Her beautiful eyes, now filled with surprise, stared at the two sinister-looking men. She simply couldn't fathom how Victor Harrington and Ryan Caldwell had come to act together. "Brother Ryan, thank you for pulling me out of the depths. Once we take care of that little beast Ethan Blackwood, we can enjoy Sophia Ashbourne together." Victor Harrington's gaze was sinister as he snarled. Previously trapped at the bottom of the valley, Victor Harrington, lacking climbing skills, had tried numerous times without success. Yet, he encountered the unfamiliar face of Ryan Caldwell. After speaking, the two immediately reached an agreement. That is, to deal with Ethan Blackwood. Now, however, the tables had turned. Victor Harrington, stripped of his followers and along with Ryan Caldwell, unarmed, knew that confronting Ethan Blackwood directly would be difficult. That's why he resorted to such underhanded tactics. When the opponent's personnel are isolated, kidnap them. The two waited for a long time at the edge of the jungle. Finally waiting for Isabel Hawthorne to arrive alone, they took this opportunity to abduct her. "Hey, first, let's have some fun. And then we'll use you to blackmail Ethan Blackwood," Victor Harrington sneered. "I'll make that little bastard pay with his life." Ryan Caldwell was equally grim, his eyes full of menace. Previously, he was chased by a pack of wolves and spent an entire night hiding in a tree, bitten by mosquitoes until he was vomiting and had diarrhea. He survived by consuming his own excrement to avoid dehydration. Just thinking about it made him feel nauseous. Ryan Caldwell blamed Ethan Blackwood for all his resentment. "HMPH. A motley crew like you is no match for Ethan Blackwood." Isabel Hawthorne lifted her head and spoke. "You little hussy." Still defiant, Victor Harrington was furious. He grabbed Isabel Hawthorne's ponytail and slapped her twice across the face. His hatred for Ethan Blackwood had already reached its peak. And now hearing Isabel Hawthorne say that he was inferior to Ethan Blackwood, he could no longer suppress the resentment in his heart. Blood trickled from the corner of Isabel Hawthorne's mouth. Her face felt numb, and the pain had dulled. "Even if you kill me, it's still the truth." Isabel Hawthorne gritted her teeth, holding back tears, and said, "You're asking for death." Victor Harrington's eyes flashed with a hint of cruelty as he suddenly kicked Isabel Hawthorne in the abdomen. Isabel Hawthorne groaned miserably, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Clutching her stomach, she curled up like a shrimp, cold sweat drenching her body. "You're trash, scum." Even so, Isabel Hawthorne did not mince words, struggling and cursing faintly. If it were before, she would have been scared to death, but after several brushes with death, Isabel Hawthorne had transformed. At the very least, She was no longer the delicate girl she once was. She had become much stronger and braver. "Looks like I'll have to bleed you dry," Victor Harrington heartlessly declared, picking up a large piece of wood, ready to strike Isabel Hawthorne. "Wait a minute. If he's smashed to death, we won't have anything to play with anymore." Ryan Caldwell, seeing the situation, quickly intervened to stop it. "Teaching Isabel Hawthorne a lesson is fine. But if her life is taken, not only will the fun be over, but Ethan Blackwood will also be out of reach." Upon hearing this, Victor Harrington finally tossed the wooden stick aside. He had been so enraged by Isabel Hawthorne's words just now that he lost his sense of reason, now that he thought about it. Ryan Caldwell was right. He couldn't let that woman's words disrupt his pace. At this thought, Victor Harrington allowed a malicious smile to spread across his face. He seized Isabel Hawthorne by the neck, as if she were a small quail, and violently tore off her hibiscus-patterned dress. Isabel Hawthorne's eyes welled up. The pain in her body was something she could endure. But the thought of being tormented by such a scoundrel filled her with an unbearable distress and a wave of nausea. Victor Harrington had been on the island for many days, and Ethan Blackwood had already infuriated him. Coupled with his prolonged abstinence from women, he was now like a volcano on the verge of eruption, immediately preparing to embrace Isabel Hawthorne. Swish! But just then, in the quiet of the night, a whooshing sound suddenly pierced the air. An arrow, swift as the wind, came speeding forth. Whoosh! Victor Harrington, who hadn't yet had the chance to bully Isabel Hawthorne, suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. A reed arrow directly pierced his left eye. Instantly, blood splattered. The intense pain twisted Victor Harrington's entire face. His remaining eye, filled with explosive rage, beheld the figure he hated with such intensity. Ethan Blackwood. Isabel Hawthorne lay collapsed on the ground, her breath barely discernible. She saw Ethan Blackwood approaching, carrying a bow and arrow on his back, his face grim. Ryan Caldwell was utterly stunned. He hadn't expected Ethan Blackwood to find them, even after they had taken Isabel Hawthorne deep into the woods. Ethan Blackwood once again drew his bow and aimed directly at Victor Harrington. Wait a minute, Ethan Blackwood, spare me." On the brink of life and death, Victor Harrington's fear of Ethan Blackwood surpassed even his hatred. Everyone likes to believe they are courageous when there's no immediate threat, but it's only when truly facing death that one realizes who the cowards are. Victor Harrington, practically at the point of soiling himself, was a complete coward. Ethan Blackwood wasted no time for further conversation, decisively drawing his bow and notching an arrow. Whoosh! In an instant, an arrow pierced Victor Harrington's throat. Victor Harrington, the president of the Martial Arts Club, eyes bulging, clutched his throat, unable to utter a single word before collapsing stiffly. On a particular day, the weather at sea was exceptionally good, with a clear sky, calm waves, and a gentle breeze. Ethan Blackwood was at the helm, heading towards a distant island, while the ship was not too large and only carried about 50 people. They were all young students, enjoying their field trip. However, an unexpected incident occurred during their journey. In the afternoon, the ship suddenly rocked violently. Ethan Blackwood quickly stabilized the vessel, but he could hear the students screaming in panic on the deck. "What's wrong?" he asked a crew member rushing over. The crew member, looking pale, exclaimed, "Captain, it's pirates." Ethan Blackwood's heart sank. Pirates were a persistent threat in these waters, especially to ships carrying wealthy students. He immediately ordered, "Sound the alarm, gather everyone in the cabin." He also noticed Sophia Ashbourne and Isabel Hawthorne among the panicking classmates. Lucas Everhart, a tall and sturdy young man, stepped forward and asked, "Ethan Blackwood, what should we do?" "Don't panic," Ethan Blackwood instructed. "Get everyone into the cabin immediately. Crew members prepare for battle." He knew that fighting pirates was dangerous, but he had to protect the students. Ethan Blackwood. "Be careful," Sophia Ashbourne called out, her face filled with concern. Lucas Everhart also said, "Ethan Blackwood will help you." Ethan Blackwood nodded, then watched them organize the classmates and guide them into the cabin. Soon, a pirate ship, flying a black flag with a skull, appeared on the horizon and quickly approached. Captain Sullivan's voice, rough and loud, echoed across the water. "Ha ha, little ship, hand over your valuables and these beautiful students. And I might spare your lives." Ethan Blackwood stood firm at the bow, his face grim. "Dreams," he retorted. "We will not surrender." Captain Sullivan scoffed. "Stubborn fool, brothers board their ship." The pirates, armed with machetes and pistols, began to board the ship. The crew members, though few, fought bravely under Ethan Blackwood's leadership. Ryan Caldwell, a strong young man, wielded a steel pipe and fiercely knocked down several pirates. Victor Harrington, agile and quick, dodged attacks and struck back with precision. However, the pirates were numerous and relentless. Lucas Everhart, seeing the disadvantage, gathered his courage. "Ethan Blackwood, we can't just hide. We must fight back," he declared to his classmates. Madeline Spencer, Emily Winters, and Maxwell Goldstein, though initially scared, were inspired by his words. Suddenly, a pirate charged at Sophia Ashbourne. "Watch out!" Ethan Blackwood shouted as he swiftly intervened, pushing Sophia Ashbourne out of the way just as the pirate's machete swung past. It left a deep cut on his arm, and blood immediately stained his clothes. "Ethan Blackwood," Sophia Ashbourne cried out, her eyes red with tears. Lucas Everhart and other classmates rushed forward to help. "Ethan Blackwood, are you all right?" Lucas Everhart asked, his face full of worry. Ethan Blackwood gritted his teeth, tearing a strip of cloth to bandage his wound. "I'm fine. We must hold on," he declared, seeing his courageous resolve. The crew members and classmates were greatly encouraged and fought with renewed determination. The battle raged fiercely. More and more classmates joined the fight, picking up anything they could use as weapons and attacking the pirates from behind. Captain Sullivan, seeing his men being held back by a group of students, became enraged. "Damn it! Kill them all!" Just as the situation seemed dire, a faint sound of sirens could be heard in the distance. Captain Sullivan's face changed instantly. "Damn it, it's the Navy! Retreat, retreat!" he roared, fearing the arrival of the Navy. The pirates scrambled back to their ship and quickly sailed away. The crisis was finally over. The ship was a mess, with debris and bloodstains everywhere, but everyone was safe. The classmates cheered, embracing each other warmly. "Ethan Blackwood, thank you. Thank you for saving us." Sophia Ashbourne and Isabel Hawthorne, along with other classmates, surrounded Ethan Blackwood, their faces filled with gratitude. Ryan Caldwell and Victor Harrington also approached, expressing their admiration for Ethan Blackwood's courage. The crew members were equally respectful. Under Ethan Blackwood's leadership, they had successfully repelled the pirates. Ethan Blackwood smiled faintly, his face pale from blood loss. "Everyone did well. We worked together." Due to his injuries, the ship changed course and headed for the nearest port for treatment. During the journey, Sophia Ashbourne and the others carefully tended to Ethan Blackwood's wounds. After recovering, Ethan Blackwood and his classmates received commendations from the school and the Navy for their bravery. Ethan Blackwood became a hero in everyone's eyes. This incident not only strengthened the bond between Ethan Blackwood and his classmates, but also forged a deep and special connection between him and Sophia Ashbourne. From then on, Ethan Blackwood continued his voyages, embarking on many more adventures, but the memory of this particular pirate attack remained a turning point in his life. Chapter 29. Lucas Everhart and the Pirates. Ethan Blackwood. Sophia Ashbourne, Lucas Everhart, and Isabel Hawthorne gathered together. The classmates also stood nearby, watching in excitement. The crew members brought out various tools and equipment. They were preparing to set off. Ryan Caldwell and Victor Harrington were checking the final details to ensure everything was ready. Madeline Spencer and Emily Winters whispered to each other, their faces filled with anticipation. Maxwell Goldstein, holding a map, pointed to a location and said something to Captain Sullivan. Captain Sullivan. Captain Sullivan nodded, then turned to Ethan Blackwood, Sophia Ashbourne, Lucas Everhart, and Isabel Hawthorne, and gave them a few instructions. Everyone listened carefully, mentally preparing for the upcoming adventure. Ryan Caldwell, standing nearby, was utterly terrified. A real dead person. This was his first time witnessing it firsthand. No sooner said than done. Ethan Blackwood's bow and arrow once again took aim at Ryan Caldwell. Ethan Blackwood, stop right there, or she's dead. However, a hint of madness flashed across Ryan Caldwell's face. He suddenly grabbed Isabel Hawthorne, using her as a shield to block himself. Ethan Blackwood frowned. It was nighttime, and if he acted rashly, he might accidentally injure Isabel Hawthorne. Although Ethan Blackwood's shooting skills had greatly improved with practice, there would still be pressure when facing someone on his own side. Furthermore, he had already fired a shot. If he continued to shoot, it would definitely be disadvantageous for them. It was truly a dilemma. He could only hope that Lucas Everhart would be able to subdue Captain Sullivan and the pirates, or that Lucas Everhart would somehow manage to escape. Otherwise, this situation would be extremely complicated. Ethan Blackwood really didn't expect that such a thing would happen in this place. But this was not the time to think about such things. While he was pondering, Lucas Everhart had already pulled out the dagger from his waist. This was the only weapon he had on him. When Captain Sullivan saw Lucas Everhart pull out a dagger, he laughed even more arrogantly. What do you think you're doing with such a small dagger? Are you trying to tickle me? Lucas Everhart didn't say anything, but directly charged towards Captain Sullivan. Seeing Lucas Everhart charge over, Captain Sullivan immediately ordered his crew members to attack. The crew members standing behind Captain Sullivan were ready to attack. But how could Lucas Everhart be easy to deal with? He was just trying to create an opening for himself, now that Captain Sullivan had called for his crew members to attack. It gave Lucas Everhart a chance. He quickly moved through the crowd, dodging the attacks of the crew members, and in a flash, he was already in front of Captain Sullivan. Captain Sullivan was clearly a little surprised. He didn't expect Lucas Everhart to be so agile. Lucas Everhart's dagger was already inches away from Captain Sullivan's throat. Captain Sullivan was terrified and immediately stopped in his tracks, not daring to move. The crew members behind him also stopped their movements and didn't dare to act rashly. Lucas Everhart said coldly, "If you don't want to die, tell your men to retreat." Captain Sullivan's face was pale. He had been a pirate for so many years and had never encountered such a situation. He felt a chill in his heart, seeing Lucas Everhart's determined eyes. Captain Sullivan had no doubt that Lucas Everhart would really kill him. He immediately shouted, "Step back! All of you step back!" The crew members looked at each other, not knowing what to do. They looked at Captain Sullivan, and then at Lucas Everhart. Seeing that they weren't moving, Lucas Everhart pressed the dagger a little harder. Captain Sullivan immediately felt a sharp pain in his neck, and a trace of blood seeped out. Captain Sullivan was even more terrified and quickly shouted, "Are you deaf? I told you to step back, step back." Hearing Captain Sullivan's roar, the crew members finally reacted and all retreated to the side. Lucas Everhart looked around and made sure that the crew members wouldn't make any sudden moves. Then he slowly moved towards the direction of the students, pulling Captain Sullivan along with him. He arrived at the side of Isabel Hawthorne and the classmates and quickly cut the ropes on their bodies. Isabel Hawthorne quickly stood up and looked at Lucas Everhart. Her eyes filled with gratitude. Lucas Everhart nodded at her, then looked at Ryan Caldwell and Victor Harrington, saying, "You too protect the classmates." Ryan Caldwell and Victor Harrington nodded. At this moment, Madeline Spencer and Emily Winters also rushed over. When they saw Isabel Hawthorne and the classmates, they immediately ran over and hugged them. Then they looked at Lucas Everhart with worried expressions. Lucas Everhart shook his head, indicating that he was fine. He then looked at Captain Sullivan and said, "Now, tell your men to put down their weapons. Otherwise, I'll kill you right now." Captain Sullivan hesitated for a moment. But seeing the coldness in Lucas Everhart's eyes, he finally gave in. He immediately shouted, "Put down your weapons. All of you, put down your weapons." The crew members looked at each other, but seeing Captain Sullivan's expression, they finally put down their weapons. Lucas Everhart then said, "Now, throw all their weapons into the sea." Captain Sullivan ordered his men to throw all their weapons into the sea. Lucas Everhart finally let out a sigh of relief. He looked at Ethan Blackwood and Sophia Ashbourne and made a gesture, signaling that it was safe. Ethan Blackwood and Sophia Ashbourne quickly walked over. Ethan Blackwood immediately went to check on Isabel Hawthorne and the classmates, making sure they were all safe. Sophia Ashbourne looked at Lucas Everhart and said, "Are you all right?" Lucas Everhart nodded and said, "I'm fine, thanks to you guys." At this moment, Maxwell Goldstein also came over. He looked at Captain Sullivan and said, "What do you plan to do with them?" Lucas Everhart thought for a moment and said, "Tie them all up." So, they used the ropes that had been used to tie up the students to tie up the pirates. After tying up all the pirates, Lucas Everhart looked at Ethan Blackwood and said, "Are there any signal flares on this ship?" Ethan Blackwood thought for a moment and said, "I think there are. Let me go check." Ethan Blackwood quickly went to the captain's cabin to search. After a while, he came back with a signal flare. Lucas Everhart took the signal flare and fired it into the sky. A bright red signal flare shot up into the night sky, illuminating the surroundings. Lucas Everhart said, "Now we just have to wait for the rescue team to arrive." Everyone finally let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, the ship's lights suddenly came on. It turned out that Ethan Blackwood had also turned on the ship's lights while he was in the captain's cabin. With the lights on, the ship was no longer as dark as before. Everyone's mood also relaxed a lot. Isabel Hawthorne looked at Lucas Everhart, her eyes filled with gratitude. She said, "Thank you, Lucas Everhart." Lucas Everhart smiled and said, "It's nothing, we're all friends." Ethan Blackwood also walked over and patted Lucas Everhart on the shoulder, saying, "Good job, Lucas Everhart." Sophia Ashbourne also came over and said, "You were really brave." Lucas Everhart blushed a little and said, "It was nothing, I just did what I had to do." Everyone laughed. The classmates also came over and thanked Lucas Everhart. Lucas Everhart was a little embarrassed by all the praise. After a while, they saw a light in the distance getting closer and closer. Everyone knew that it was the rescue team. They all cheered. Soon, a rescue ship arrived. The rescue team quickly boarded their ship. When they saw the tied-up pirates, they were all surprised. Suddenly, Ethan Blackwood realized this place seemed a bit familiar. "Ethan Blackwood, don't worry about me. Kill him." Biting her lip until it bled, Isabel Hawthorne shrieked uncontrollably. The hatred she harbored for Victor Harrington and Ryan Caldwell had driven her to lose all reason. Isabel Hawthorne was willing to trade her life, even if it meant sacrificing herself. Ethan Blackwood, however, put away his bow and arrow, drew the military knife from his back, and walked step by step toward Ryan Caldwell. Ryan Caldwell swallowed frantically, his heart nearly leaping out of his chest. His legs suddenly felt weak. Watching Ethan Blackwood approach, he was like a devil walking towards them. "You, don't come any closer." Ryan Caldwell retreated nervously, speaking as he went. While he now holds Isabel Hawthorne as a hostage, no one can be certain that Ethan Blackwood won't go berserk. "All right, I won't come over. You release her and I'll let you go. But if you keep holding her, I'll follow you forever, and you'll never escape." Ethan Blackwood suddenly spoke. "Hess, do you take me for a fool? Why would I run after you? You have a bow and arrow, how can I run?" Ryan Caldwell sneered. Snap. However, Ethan Blackwood was seen snapping both the bow and arrow. Isabel Hawthorne was beside herself with anxiety. At this point, she didn't care whether she lived or died, as long as Ethan Blackwood could eliminate Ryan Caldwell. Ryan Caldwell, however, was incredibly excited. Now that Ethan Blackwood had broken the bow, he couldn't attack from a distance. Now you can let her go, otherwise, I will hunt you down to the ends of the earth. Ethan Blackwood's expression turned cold as he spoke. Ryan Caldwell clutched Isabel Hawthorne's neck and retreated a few more steps. Once he reached what he considered a safe distance, he immediately pushed Isabel Hawthorne away and frantically began to run wildly toward the rear. If possible, he would have liked to keep Isabel Hawthorne under his control. But running away with a hostage would be inconvenient. Ethan Blackwood, you little bastard, just you wait. Victor Harrington has already told me that more people are coming for you. When they do, you won't even know how you died. Ryan Caldwell roared as he ran, but before he could finish speaking, a blood-curdling scream suddenly erupted. Immediately after, all communication was completely lost. Ethan Blackwood. What's wrong with him? Isabel Hawthorne asked, despite her ragged clothes. Not far ahead is the trap where they caught the wild boars. There's a big pit there. In this pitch darkness, one could fall in and die. Ethan Blackwood shrugged. Seeing the familiar environment, he immediately remembered that this was where he had caught the wild boar. Therefore, Ethan Blackwood employed a strategy of feigned retreat to make Ryan Caldwell drop his guard. In the dead of night, that trap was nothing but a dark pit. Impossible to notice. Falling in would mean being directly impaled by bamboo spikes. Isabel Hawthorne walked forward barefoot. It wasn't until he saw Ryan Caldwell, lying dead in the trap, that the knot of anger in his heart finally loosened. Her nerves, like a taut string, suddenly relaxed and combined with her injury. Isabel Hawthorne immediately fainted. Ethan Blackwood quickly stepped forward and picked her up. At that moment, Sophia Ashbourne also rushed over. Seeing the injuries on Isabel Hawthorne's face and abdomen, a pang of pain shot through her heart, and tears immediately welled up. Who did this? Sophia Ashbourne, heartbroken, embraced Isabel Hawthorne and said with deep resentment, Victor Harrington and Ryan Caldwell are already dealt with. As Ethan Blackwood spoke, his mind was pondering what Ryan Caldwell had said when he fled. Someone would come after him. What did that mean? If I were to speak of enemies, it seems they have largely been eliminated. On this deserted island, only one remains, and that is Lucas Everhart. Lucas Everhart's undeniable resentment towards himself for having been castrated by his own arrow was self-evident. Ethan Blackwood didn't care whether Lucas Everhart lived or died. After all, how could Lucas Everhart, with his abilities, contend with him? However, Ryan Caldwell's words subtly unsettled Ethan Blackwood. Let's head back to the beach first. Ethan Blackwood picked up Isabel Hawthorne and said. Sophia Ashbourne nodded, and the two quickly ran towards the camp. The hearts of the other three immediately tensed when they saw Ethan Blackwood return, carrying the injured Isabel Hawthorne. We'll find another place to rest tonight, Ethan Blackwood said in a deep voice. Ryan Caldwell's words left Ethan Blackwood unsettled. The other party certainly wouldn't speak without reason. So to be safe, the cautious Ethan Blackwood decided to lie low tonight. No matter what was going to happen, Ethan Blackwood disliked passively waiting, putting himself in a reactive position. Maxwell Goldstein had no objections and picked up his fire axe, shrewdly. He knew whose lead to follow on this deserted island for a better chance at survival. Madeline Spencer's expression was complex. She seemed lost in thought. Emily Winters still clutched her box tightly. Ethan Blackwood hesitated no longer. He slung the hiking backpack, filled with wild boar meat, onto his back and led everyone to a previously selected cave. The rock cave was hidden behind the trees, with a large opening at the front and a smaller one at the back. It would be impossible to discover it without a close look. Especially at night, it was completely invisible from the outside. Moreover, this cave offers a more significant advantage. From here, one can clearly see the dwellings on the that if anyone approaches, they can be seen distinctly, creating a situation where the enemy is exposed while we remain hidden. However, wild beasts in the jungle can see at night, therefore, without a light source. It was very dangerous for the group to stay in the pitch-black cave. Ethan Blackwood knew this well, so he found some dead acacia branches and placed them at the cave entrance as a fence. The withered branches of the black locust tree are covered with numerous sharp thorns. Beasts are very wary of these thorns, especially lone beasts. When encountering such a barrier, usually choose to leave rather than proceed. With the fence made of dry locust branches, the level of safety significantly increased. In the pitch-black space, all they could hear was each other's breathing. In such an environment, everyone felt very oppressed, especially when facing an unknown danger. Wrestle, wrestle. But just then, a chaotic sound of footsteps suddenly came from ahead. Instantly, everyone's hearts leaped into their throats. Their eyes widened, and they held their breath, staring intently at the jungle ahead. "Hey everyone, look, there's firelight over there." Then, a familiar voice drifted over. It's Lucas Everhart. Ethan Blackwood and Sophia Ashbourne recognized it instantly. "Ethan Blackwood, Isabel Hawthorne," Sophia Ashbourne exclaimed, pulling at Lucas Everhart's sleeve as she pointed to the opposite side of the ship. Lucas Everhart looked over and indeed saw Ethan Blackwood and Isabel Hawthorne. Lucas Everhart clenched his fists. His eyes filled with jealousy. That Ethan Blackwood, isn't he just a driver for Sophia Ashbourne's family? How did he end up on this ship? I don't know, but he's really annoying. Don't worry, Lucas Everhart. I'm only interested in you, Sophia Ashbourne said softly as she leaned into Lucas Everhart's arms. I just didn't expect to see him here. Ethan Blackwood and Isabel Hawthorne were in good spirits as soon as Sophia Ashbourne and Lucas Everhart appeared. The festive mood on the deck instantly cooled. All the classmates looked at Ethan Blackwood and Isabel Hawthorne, then at Sophia Ashbourne and Lucas Everhart. Everyone knew about the conflict between these two groups, so the atmosphere grew tense. Sophia Ashbourne, Lucas Everhart, what a coincidence to see you here. Ethan Blackwood greeted them, wearing a dazzling smile. Sophia Ashbourne smiled faintly. Yes, what a coincidence. Ethan Blackwood. Do you also want to take this cruise around the world? Exactly. Why don't we go together? There are so many people, it's more lively, Ethan Blackwood said cheerfully. Sophia Ashbourne glanced at Lucas Everhart, then returned a smile to Ethan Blackwood and said, Forget it, Ethan Blackwood. You should be careful. This ship is filled with rich people. Don't cause trouble for yourself by accidentally offending someone. Her words were laced with sarcasm, implying that Ethan Blackwood wasn't worthy of being on this ship. The classmates all started whispering amongst themselves. Ethan Blackwood simply smiled and did not reply. The ship was bustling with people, and the crew members quickly began to arrange the classmates into their cabins. Ethan Blackwood and Isabel Hawthorne were assigned a cabin with a sea view on the 4th floor, which was quite spacious. This was the first time Isabel Hawthorne had stayed in such a luxurious room, and she was very excited. As soon as she entered, she started bouncing around on the bed. Compared to Isabel Hawthorne's excitement, Ethan Blackwood was much calmer. He checked the room and then ordered some food. While they were eating, the ship began to sail. We're off, Isabel Hawthorne exclaimed excitedly, running to the window and looking out. The sea was vast and endless. The gentle sea breeze blew through the window, carrying a refreshing scent. Isabel Hawthorne took a deep breath, feeling incredibly comfortable. She had never felt so relaxed before. Ethan Blackwood smiled and walked to her side, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. If you like it, we can come often in the future. Really? Isabel Hawthorne's eyes lit up. Of course, I never lie to you, Ethan Blackwood said as he gently stroked her hair. Hearing his words, Isabel Hawthorne felt a warmth in her heart. She hadn't realized how much she had come to rely on Ethan Blackwood. Being with him always made her feel safe and at ease. If only they could always be together. She thought. Ethan Blackwood, what's your plan after this trip? Isabel Hawthorne asked, looking up at him. Ethan Blackwood thought for a moment and said, I haven't thought about it yet. Maybe I'll open a company or something similar. What about you? Aren't you returning to the police station for your internship? Isabel Hawthorne nodded. Yes, but I want to go on a few more trips with you first. Ethan Blackwood smiled faintly. Sure, no problem. Just then, outside the cabin, there was a sudden commotion. Ethan Blackwood frowned slightly, walked to the door, and opened it. He saw a group of people gathered in the corridor. Among them were Lucas Everhart, Ryan Caldwell, Victor Harrington, and Madeline Spencer. They all looked angry, as if something unpleasant had happened. What caught Ethan Blackwood's attention was that Lucas Everhart was holding a girl's hand, while the girl was crying and struggling to break free. Lucas Everhart. Let me go. I don't want to be with you. The girl was Emily Winters, one of their classmates. Emily Winters' face was pale, and her eyes were filled with fear. Lucas Everhart sneered. Heh, you don't want to be with me, Emily Winters. Let me tell you, it's your honor to serve Lucas Everhart. So stop resisting, or I won't be polite. Lucas Everhart, you scoundrel. Let go of Emily Winters, Ryan Caldwell shouted, rushing forward to pull Lucas Everhart. However, Lucas Everhart kicked him back, sending Ryan Caldwell stumbling. Victor Harrington and Madeline Spencer also wanted to help, but they were held back by Ryan Caldwell. Lucas Everhart. How dare you be so arrogant? Victor Harrington yelled angrily. Lucas Everhart snorted. So what if I'm arrogant? Do you have a problem with that? You bully. Madeline Spencer was also furious. Lucas Everhart laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, so what if I bully people? Do you also want to be bullied by me? Lucas Everhart. Stop it, or I'll call the police, Ryan Caldwell shouted, pointing at Lucas Everhart. Lucas Everhart's face darkened as he stared at Ryan Caldwell and said, You want to call the police? Go ahead. Do you think I'm afraid of you? This is my territory, even if you call the police. They wouldn't dare to touch me. You despicable villain, Ryan Caldwell cursed. Lucas Everhart threw Emily Winters aside, stepped forward, grabbed Ryan Caldwell by the collar, and threw a punch at his face. Ryan Caldwell screamed and fell to the ground, blood gushing from his nose. Lucas Everhart, you villain. Victor Harrington and Madeline Spencer were both terrified and angry as they were about to rush forward. Lucas Everhart kicked Ryan Caldwell with his foot. Ryan Caldwell let out another scream. At this moment, another figure suddenly appeared. This person was Maxwell Goldstein, one of their classmates. Maxwell Goldstein walked up to Lucas Everhart, looked at Ryan Caldwell on the ground, and then sneered at Lucas Everhart. Lucas Everhart. What are you doing? Lucas Everhart glanced at Maxwell Goldstein and said disdainfully, Maxwell Goldstein, what are you doing here? Do you want to try my fists too? Maxwell Goldstein smiled coldly and said, Lucas Everhart, you're too overbearing. This is a public place. How can you just hit people like this? I just hit him. What can you do about it? Lucas Everhart said arrogantly. Maxwell Goldstein's face darkened. He knew that Lucas Everhart had a powerful background, and he really couldn't do anything to him, so he just sneered. Lucas Everhart, you're out of control. Do you know how many people are watching you? Lucas Everhart laughed. So what? Do you think I care? Anyway, I've already warned them if they don't listen. They deserve to be beaten. Just as Lucas Everhart was speaking, Emily Winters' phone suddenly rang. She quickly picked it up. Hello, who is it? Emily Winters asked nervously. Emily Winters. Are you on the cruise ship? A low voice came from the phone. Emily Winters was stunned for a moment, then she asked, Yes, who are you? How do you know I'm on the cruise ship? Heck. I am Captain Sullivan. I heard that someone on my ship is causing trouble, so I came to check it out, Captain Sullivan said with a smile. Upon hearing Captain Sullivan, Lucas Everhart's expression changed dramatically. He had only heard of Captain Sullivan, but he had never met him. He knew that Captain Sullivan was not only the captain of this ship, but also the leader of a pirate group. He was very powerful. If he offended Captain Sullivan, he would be in big trouble. Thinking of this, Lucas Everhart quickly pulled Emily Winters, wanting to escape. However, before he could take 2 steps, Captain Sullivan's voice came from the phone again. Lucas Everhart. I'm already at your door. You should come out and see me. Lucas Everhart's body stiffened. He slowly turned around and saw a middle-aged man standing not far away. The man was wearing a black uniform and had a serious expression on his face. He was Captain Sullivan. Captain Sullivan glanced at Lucas Everhart, then stepped forward, slapped Lucas Everhart fiercely across the face. Lucas Everhart staggered and almost fell. Captain Sullivan then pointed at Lucas Everhart and cursed. You idiot! How dare you cause trouble on my ship? Do you want to die? Seeing Captain Sullivan, Lucas Everhart quickly begged for mercy. Captain Sullivan, I was wrong. Please spare me. Captain Sullivan sneered. Spare you? There's no such thing. You dare to hit people on my ship, you're simply looking for death. Guards, drag this guy down and teach him a lesson. As soon as Captain Sullivan's words fell, 2 burly men came forward and dragged Lucas Everhart away. No matter how Lucas Everhart struggled, it was useless. He was soon dragged to a corner and given a severe beating. After dealing with Lucas Everhart, Captain Sullivan looked at Emily Winters and said, Miss Emily Winters, are you hurt? Emily Winters quickly shook her head and said, I'm not hurt, thank you, Captain Sullivan. Captain Sullivan nodded and then waved his hand. All right, everyone. Disperse. Don't gather here, it's not good for your reputation. The classmates quickly dispersed, leaving only Ethan Blackwood, Isabel Hawthorne, Maxwell Goldstein, Ryan Caldwell, Victor Harrington, and Madeline Spencer. Captain Sullivan glanced at Ethan Blackwood meaningfully before turning and leaving. Ethan Blackwood smiled faintly and didn't say anything. Maxwell Goldstein looked at Ethan Blackwood and thanked him. Ethan Blackwood. Thank you. Why are you thanking me? Ethan Blackwood asked, puzzled. Maxwell Goldstein smiled bitterly. Actually, I called Captain Sullivan. If you hadn't secretly sent me the information about Lucas Everhart's misdeeds, I wouldn't have been able to expose him. You are truly resourceful and amazing. Ethan Blackwood just smiled and said, It's nothing. I just can't stand people like him. Just as they were talking, Ryan Caldwell suddenly screamed, interrupting their conversation. Ethan Blackwood looked over and saw Ryan Caldwell covering his nose, blood still flowing. His face was pale. Ethan Blackwood frowned and walked over to Ryan Caldwell, saying, Let me see your injury. Ryan Caldwell removed his hand. His nose was clearly broken, and his face was swollen like a pig's head. Ethan Blackwood sighed and said, It's quite serious. You should go to the infirmary for treatment. Okay, Ryan Caldwell replied, his voice muffled. Victor Harrington and Madeline Spencer quickly helped Ryan Caldwell to the infirmary. Ethan Blackwood, I'm a little scared. Isabel Hawthorne said softly, holding Ethan Blackwood's arm. Ethan Blackwood smiled faintly and said, Don't be afraid. With me here, no one will dare to bully you. Chapter 30, Madeline Spencer's Betrayal. A luxurious cruise ship. The dream of the sea was quietly docked in a port in the Pacific Ocean. Tonight, a grand masquerade ball was being held on the ship. The deck, usually quiet, was now bustling with people. Men in elegant suits and women in dazzling evening gowns mingled and chatted, creating a lively atmosphere. Ethan Blackwood, dressed in a black suit, stood out from the crowd with his handsome appearance. He politely declined Sophia Ashbourne's invitation to dance, stating that he was feeling unwell. As Sophia Ashbourne turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of Isabel Hawthorne hiding in a corner, observing her. A faint smile touched Sophia Ashbourne's lips. Feeling a bit bored, Ethan Blackwood decided to take a stroll on the deck, enjoying the sea. He heard a cry for help. A girl had accidentally fallen into the sea. Without hesitation, Ethan Blackwood jumped into the water, despite being physically weaker than Lucas Everhart. Ethan Blackwood managed to pull the girl out of the water. Classmates and crew members quickly gathered around. Ryan Caldwell, a well-built young man, was surprised to see the unconscious girl in Ethan Blackwood's arms. It was Madeline Spencer, a kind and quiet girl. Lucas Everhart looked at Ethan Blackwood with a complicated expression. After checking Madeline Spencer, Emily Winters confirmed she was fine. Just unconscious. Madeline Spencer slowly opened her eyes. Seeing Ethan Blackwood, she lowered her head shyly. Maxwell Goldstein watched the scene with a cold gaze. A sudden explosion rocked the ship, followed by alarms. Crew members rushed to investigate, discovering that pirates had boarded the ship. Captain Sullivan, a burly man, entered the hall with his crew. His terrifying gaze swept across the crowd, immediately instilling fear. Everyone realized the gravity of the situation. Captain Sullivan's hoarse voice announced, "From now on, everyone on this ship is our prisoner." His words sent shivers down their spines. But now, it was clear that Lucas Everhart was not alone. Behind him, more than a dozen people followed. Each of them was dressed in leather, and people of various complexions were among them. The most terrifying thing was that each of them held a gun. Ethan Blackwood's expression was grave. He didn't know who these people were or where they came from. But one thing was certain: they were definitely not natives. And judging by their neatly arranged attire, they clearly had not washed ashore after some misfortune. Moreover, since they had guns, Ethan Blackwood deduced that these people must be pirates. This is going to be troublesome. After all, confronted with modern weaponry, traditional arms suffer from a dimensional disadvantage. Even if a saber and an entrenching tool are incredibly powerful, can they stand up to bullets? "Captain, I'll go up and see if he's there." As Ethan Blackwood pondered, he heard someone among the group shout. Indeed, just as Ethan Blackwood had expected. These people are really pirates. Ethan Blackwood's mind raced. Thieves don't leave empty-handed. And pirates are also thieves. They wouldn't come here for no reason. So, besides the possibility of treasure, there could only be one other explanation. That means, among their group, there is their target. Who could it be? While Maxwell Goldstein is a boss, he hasn't reached the level of international capital. As for Madeline Spencer, she's merely his subordinate. Ethan Blackwood and Isabel Hawthorne are even more ordinary individuals. So, Ethan Blackwood's gaze swept towards Sophia Ashbourne and Emily Winters in the darkness. Aside from these two individuals, Ethan Blackwood could not think of anyone else. Sophia Ashbourne, of course, is the daughter of Lin Tianxiang, the richest man in the capital. Lin Tianxiang is an international financier, a magnate known worldwide. For someone of his stature, his family members would certainly be listed on the dark web. The number of people within the country who would want to kidnap Sophia Ashbourne might be few, but internationally, such individuals are plentiful. One can imagine the immense ransom that could be demanded if Sophia Ashbourne were to be kidnapped. Other than Sophia Ashbourne, there was Emily Winters, although Ethan Blackwood didn't know her. From Sophia Ashbourne's words, it was clear that as a renowned scientist, she must be internationally famous. If certain forces wanted to capture her, it was highly probable they would issue a bounty. In summary, it has been over a week since we arrived on this island. The news of the luxury cruise ship sinking must have spread worldwide. Therefore, the identities of all those aboard the cruise ship have undoubtedly been thoroughly investigated by now. Ethan Blackwood's gaze fell upon Emily Winters, and he immediately frowned. He noticed that Emily Winters seemed very nervous, clutching her metal box tightly. You know, she had always been expressionless before, unfazed by anything. But now, why did she have that look on her face? "They're looking for you," Ethan Blackwood whispered. "Perhaps." Emily Winters' voice was low, and she clutched the box in her hands even tighter. Ethan Blackwood had always been curious about what else was in her box, besides the tranquilizer gun, that made her hug it even when she slept. "They're here for you. So go out there, don't get us killed. They have guns." At this moment, to everyone's surprise, Madeline Spencer suddenly spoke with venom. She looked terrified, clearly afraid of being discovered by the other party. "No, my research isn't finished yet," Emily Winters immediately stated. "Is your research more important than our lives?" Madeline Spencer said acrimoniously. "Important, more important than anything else. Now, with just one more material, my research can be completed. Once it is, our Yanlong nation will be far ahead of other countries in the field of cellular biology." It was the one and only time Emily Winters had explained so much. Ethan Blackwood understood at once. It seemed that what Emily Winters was researching was very important. Since they were working together, Ethan Blackwood would not give up easily. Moreover, for a study beneficial to the nation and its people, he could even less allow Emily Winters to face the danger alone. Madeline Spencer was about to speak again, but was immediately cut off by Ethan Blackwood. Her expression instantly darkened. At this moment, the pirates' voices came again. "Captain, there's no one up here, but the firewood has been freshly added, which means they left recently." The leading captain, wearing a pirate bandana, was incredibly robust, with bronzed, muscular arms. Upon hearing the crew member's words, Captain Sullivan immediately waved his hand and commanded, "Start searching right away. Make sure you find Emily Winters and Sophia Ashbourne." Immediately, all the crew members, armed with powerful flashlights, began searching everywhere. Sophia Ashbourne and Emily Winters both turned pale. Although they had anticipated it, hearing Captain Sullivan's command still filled them with immense fear. The pirate crew, using the giant rock as their center, began spreading out to search the surroundings. Soon, the sound of pirates could be heard from outside, almost within reach. Just then, Madeline Spencer suddenly rushed out of the cave. "The person you're looking for is here." She was seen running frantically towards the pirates, shouting as she went. "Damn it!" Ethan Blackwood was furious. If only his bow hadn't broken, he would have surely dealt with that malicious woman. However, there's no time to pursue her now. Madeline Spencer's cries had already attracted all the pirates. "Run!" Ethan Blackwood immediately scooped up Isabel Hawthorne, and with a decisive shout, rushed towards the small exit at the back of the cave. Sophia Ashbourne and Emily Winters followed closely. Maxwell Goldstein, terrified, also quickly ran along, starting a frantic escape into the dark jungle. "They're over there. Chase them. Capture Sophia Ashbourne and Emily Winters and be richly rewarded. Apart from these two captives, eliminate the rest." A clamor of voices erupted from behind, sending shivers down one's spine. Ethan Blackwood understood at once, just as he had surmised. Their objective was Sophia Ashbourne and Emily Winters. The most important thing now is to avoid direct confrontation. The pirate group has already found their way here, which means the search and rescue team might also land on the island soon. Ethan Blackwood's strategic goal was simple: delay. The two girls the pirates want to capture are of extremely high value, which means the rescue team will take this very seriously. The people who arrive then certainly won't be incompetent. But that was assuming Ethan Blackwood could stall until they arrived. Rustling sounds continued to emanate from behind. But as before, Ethan Blackwood had the guidance of Polaris. ensuring he wouldn't go off course. Ethan Blackwood, listen. The footsteps behind us haven't faded. Sophia Ashbourne perked her ears, growing increasingly tense as she heard the sounds coming from behind. It seems they know how to navigate at night too. Stay close to me. After speaking, Ethan Blackwood stopped running in a straight line and instead began to constantly reverse his path. This indeed widened the distance from their pursuers, although the pirates knew how to navigate by the Big Dipper. Ethan Blackwood and his group were not using torches, so in the complete darkness, it was unclear which direction Ethan Blackwood had run. Even so,